Hello, this is Angie Yingst, and you're listening to Centered, grounded conversations about the metaphysical.
Blessed February, friends. It's Angie Yingst, and I'm coming in with your February Tarot and Earth Medicine reading. And so I want to start with the astrology, and then we'll go into the tarot card and then the Earth Medicine. So we're starting, of course, February with this new moon in Aquarius. And we have a lot of interesting astrological energy this first week of February. So we have the new moon in Aquarius. It's also the lunar new year. So what that means, it's the first new moon of the lunar year. So, and of course, it's Chinese New Year and Korean New Year, and it's the lunar new year. So, we see it as the mark of, just like basically bigger energy here of new beginnings, right? So we're kind of working with that new beginnings energy. We have Imbolc tomorrow, the February 2nd. And Imbolc is the cross quarter holiday in the northern hemisphere between winter solstice and vernal equinox. So it's just a moment on the wheel of the year, and for Imbolc, which is Welsh for ewe's milk, this is the midpoint in winter. We call this kind of the energy here is the stirring of the seeds. This is when the seeds, they say, stir under the ground, getting ready to start making their journey upward. And then by vernal equinox, we'll see them poking their heads out of the soil. So, and why we call this ewe's milk is that often the first lambs were born during this time. And so that gift of ewe's milk for those who follow an agrarian calendar can be such a gift because it was kind of keeping you through the winter. So, um, and of course your stores are getting depleted about this time. So that can be super, super helpful. So we have this new moon in Aquarius this week on the 1st. Then we have Imbolc on the 2nd. And then on the 3rd, Mercury stations direct. And Mercury stations direct means that Mercury has been in retrograde since January 14th, which I think many of you know. And, this new moon is dealing with structures. In particular, we kind of talked about it in the new moon reading, but if you don't get the new moon reading, what basically Aquarius is an innovator. It is an air sign. It's very logical and thoughtful, and also it is the creative, innovative genius of the zodiac. So we were really talking about that. This new moon in Aquarius is square with Uranus, and Uranus is kind of the planet of change and disruption and about doing things differently. And it's conjunct with Saturn, which is the planet of traditions and doing things in the same way. So you can see this tension here this week. And what I really was asking in this new moon reading is like what rituals and structures can help you get to the change that you're looking to call in the beginning of this lunar new year, new moon, however you start this intention setting. But I think this would be a great time this first week to really set a lot of intentions and really think about what you really want. So we need a way to deal with our structures and our schedules and go to what works with us, the rituals that work with us, But if they don't work, then we're looking to, really innovate. And that's where that Aquarius energy comes in. And that's where that square with Uranus really helps us because we're kind of looking to change. And so when we have Mercury stationing direct in the middle of this wonderful energy, what we're really looking at is, um, a sudden forward motion there. So I wouldn't be surprised if Thursday you start feeling like a releasing of that energy, almost like whoosh, you're starting to move forward. So we're going during, the stationing of the direct of Mercury, we're also looking at in conjunction with Pluto. So when it's in conjunction with Pluto, and Pluto is this planet of, I don't want to say darkness, but it kind of is a planet of shadow, the things we hide, there's a different energy. So this is kind of moving us forward. So think of Mercury, and this was something that Channy Nicholas said, was like Mercury's kind of like a megaphone, and when it is in this um, conjunction with Pluto, it's going to megaphone the secrets. So her suggestion was looking at what's happening in the news, like which secretive things that, everybody thought was under the surface, particularly with our, leaders and things like that, what's going to be megaphoned out, what's going to be broadcast, what secrets are going to come to light, what are we going to find out. And so we also think of it in terms of us, like what secrets have we kept that aren't serving us anymore? What can we megaphone out and have them come to light that can help us reveal that next place, that moves us to the next place? Because remember, we're also going in forward motion. This isn't something that's supposed to hijack us, our progress. It's supposed to move us forward. So we're in this period where we're committing to what works. We're really looking at these structures. We're keeping those structures simple, and then we are doing it over and over again because it works. So we want to like look at that schedule and continue to continue. This is really like a time of adulting, okay? And it's not that time of like fun, but we do want to look at our self-care as a really valuable part of what we're looking at that works and that is important. So we're really kind of checking in with, our own wisdom, what we need, and, look at what works for a long period of time. And, one of the things about this kind of specific energy and astrology is that we're not looking at quick fixes and like getting a quick, yeah, I mean, I think quick fix in terms of drug addicts, like what's going to just make you feel good right in this moment is not what we're looking for. We're looking for things that are like long-term investments in our happiness. Because when we get that, that's something special. That's really going to feel important. So, this new moon is really a time to start that new energy and then challenging ourselves to step in our integrity and look at the structures that work. And we're going to kind of carry this theme through. There's a full moon in Leo on the 16th of February. And of course, Leos are really fun in full moons because they have a lot of this like dynamic, creative energy. They are out there, they're sexy, they're charismatic. The energy is wonderful to carry forward with the full moon. So you're looking at this kind of like very internal time where we're looking at like the boring structures. And as you move into, that February 16th part, it's really like, ta-da, I'm here and I'm a Leo. It's a dramatic sign. It makes an entrance. And it has that lion energy, right? Think of the Leo. What it does is it represents, that strength and courage and knowing who you are, okay, and accepting. Again, one of the things I talked about with the new moon reading is like how much this radical self-acceptance is asked of you. And that Leo can be really like, you're really in love with yourself as a Leo. Leos can do that work really, really well because they're not afraid of, their own strengths. And, that I think that can be like what we struggle with when we're in Leo too is like, I don't want to be self centered or I don't want to sound too egotistical or I don't want to sound too arrogant. No, 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 no. Knowing your strengths is none of those things. But if we're taught to be small and we've had people like kind of knock us down a peg or two, you know, we forget that like just knowing your strength is part of humility. And Leo's really wonderful at knowing their strengths and really wonderful at like being in love with themselves. And I mean, I say that in a joking way, but the truth is that is so valuable. It only makes people uncomfortable when they don't know how to do that for themselves. Okay? So we want to really embrace that part of Leo and really accept that part of Leo because it is so, so valuable to love yourself. And when I say be in love with yourself, it's just really like, be like, I like who I am. I'm comfortable with who I am. I like me. I love that, right? And then we move on the 18th. That's 2 days later after this full moon, with the sun moves into Pisces. So we're looking at some watery energy there. But just really abiding your integrity is going to be a valuable part of this month and this work astrologically. So I hope that made sense. Now we're going to move on to like what our tarot card of the month is. And, last month we had the Ten of Swords, which is basically the death card of the minor arcana. And now we actually have the death card of the major arcana coming in. And death, of course, shows death, riding a horse into battle. The king is dead. Mother Earth, the Empress is dead or dying. And there's a little kid who's kind of oblivious. And the Hierophant's begging for his life, and there's a new dawn coming up in the background. And, you know, I did an interesting podcast with Kira Pauls in, I can't remember. I feel like I don't know which one it is, but it was about the quote unquote dark cards of the tarot and how to deal with them. And if you want to have a listen, that's an interesting conversation, especially if when you hear that you're working with the death card, it's like, oh God, what's going to happen? Nothing's going to happen. This is a card of real change and transformation and release. Okay. We cannot ignore the fact that this is actual like death, right? And I don't mean that someone's going to die. I just mean that you are letting something die. You're not putting it aside for a while. You're not going to go pick it up again. It's dying. Okay? We can't resurrect. Okay? We can rebirth. We can come in as something new, but we can't we're not necromancers. We're not reanimating the dead. And so when we work with the death card, we're really thinking about what are we absolutely done with? I can think of about 15 things right now that I want to be absolutely done with. But we're thinking about that in relation to the work that we're doing this month. Okay? It's going to be really interesting with the other medicine, and I'm excited to go into that. And I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, so I'm going to slow down a minute and just talk about the death card. And when we talk about calling in new energy around structures, we're also talking about that kind of old patterning that we have in our subconscious that keeps us small, that keeps us that's not working for us anymore. Okay? And we may see it as, okay, so we know that maybe a bad habit, maybe smoking isn't good for us, or drinking. Those might be things, but that's too superficial for this work, okay? We're not looking at that. We're looking at the spiritual illness underneath the thing, okay? So what is the thing behind the thing behind the thing, okay? So what are we ready to release? What part of our structure is not working? And the part of the structure that isn't working is the part that needs to die. Okay? This can be things your parents told you, things the church told you, things the school told you, things that society told you, things that capitalism told you, whatever those things are that we're ready to release. And it's not going to be the same for every person. Okay? I pulled a rebel card, and I pulled it before the tarot card, and the one that came up was time to let go, move the fuck on. And so that's what death is about, we have to be done. Again, we're not necromancers, we're not reanimating it. We're not coming, reanimating something, because remember what the lessons of Practical Magic, the movie, are? When you reanimate something, it becomes unholy, unnatural. When it's dead, it's dead. Okay? So part of the medicine of death is grieving, releasing, letting go, moving on to the next place. Doesn't mean you have to be happy about it. We're just gonna release. Okay? I think I might have told this story about they call it the mustard seed. It's a Buddhist like fable about this woman whose baby died, and she was it died in the night, and she ran from doctor to doctor asking them to bring her baby back to life, like fix him. He's sick. You have to help him. And they're like, we're sorry, he died. Like it's time to let him go. And she just kept carrying it around, going to each doctor. And she finally goes to this pharmacist and basically says, do you have medicine that can help my baby? And he says, I don't, but maybe the Buddha does. And so she goes to the temple and she runs in, interrupting, the meditation, and says, can you heal my baby? And the Buddha says, yes, leave him here. And I, I love this because, and also as someone who's a bereaved mom, it's also deeply upsetting to think somebody would do this. But anyway, says, I have a cure, but it's, you need a mustard seed from a home where death has not touched the door. So she goes door to door, knocking on the door. Hey, do you have a mustard seed? Yeah, I have a mustard seed. Oh gosh, now I got Louis barking. I have a mustard seed. It's like, okay, have you lost anybody? Has anybody died in your family? So, oh yeah, my dad died last year. Oh yeah, I lost my cousin. Each door, the next person had lost somebody. So she could not find a mustard seed from a home where death hadn't touched that family. And it's an important metaphor. So she goes back and she has the lesson in her heart now that everybody goes through death and that we have to let go of the dead. Because when she takes the baby, and in the Buddhist fable, they explain the baby is rotting in her hands because she doesn't want to let go and she can't see it. And so you have to think about what is the thing you're holding on to that's rotten and dead and decaying. What is the thing you don't even want anymore that you're holding on to? Maybe it's, sexual hang-ups. Maybe it's, how you're supposed to work, how you're supposed to be, how much money you're supposed to have in the bank. Maybe it's, in a relationship that isn't working, a friendship that isn't working, a job that isn't working. What is rotten? Where, can you find that seed of compassion? It's here, okay? It's in the self. So, death will mean the end of something. You get to decide what it's the end of. So we're looking to not resist, deny, and ignore what's happening. Okay, but just to die. So it's very interesting, and I usually do the animal medicine last, but I've decided to do the animal medicine next because I think it's important to connect them. So our animal of the month is a possum, which I was so happy about, I have to say. We have lots of possum here in Pennsylvania. And really, they're the oldest mammal. They're a marsupial, so that means they carry their babies in their pouch. But their main medicine is about playing dead, right? And I think that can be like an interesting thing. So let's talk about the possum and possum medicine. Because we don't talk about it a lot. There are a lot of people who love possum. They, here in Pennsylvania, we love them because they eat ticks. They're pretty gentle creatures. Again, like their main defense is playing dead. They also do have teeth and claws, but they don't use them very often. In fact, they really hate that. Um, they are often like demonized a little bit because of a lot of people think it's because their tail is weird looking. But they are, they're actually really sweet. Their babies are in their pouches for about a month. And then they, hang out on the back of the mama. You can see them. They're so cute when you see them. They have an amazing immune system. So they are, eating lots of bugs and things. They have, um, they're often found like people will see them like in their barns or in their, if they have outside cats and they have cat food out, possum love cat food. So you'll see them around and they really do rely on their intuition. So possum are incredibly intuitive, and in fact, that whole idea of them playing dead is an intuition. One of their main medicines is that they're constantly evaluating the situation that they're in. The playing dead part, they have the ability basically to like shut down their central nervous system. So they actually go into kind of like a self induced coma. They release a smell that, like, probably we couldn't tell, but um, animals sense is like a dead animal smell. They basically shut down when things are too hot to handle. In some Native American tribes, they would use possum medicine in battle. They would pretend to be dead, and then when they felt the enemy was comfortable, they would pop up again and continue fighting. So they can help you escape that feeling of being attacked by kind of retreating. So I think that can be a really important medicine for many of us who, like for example, we may hear somebody's talking about us and we feel like we have to call that person and tell them off and blah 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 blah. When possum medicine comes in, no response is needed. Okay. And that's the kind of like playing dead part that can be valuable for us when we're working with like the death card, right? Is to also think about like those times when, um, we're in like fight or flight or, freeze. Where the possum is in freeze mode, right? Or death mode. We're not fighting. Okay, that it's not an aggressive time with possum. We're in that place of like kind of no response is the response. And so if you're debating whether to respond to someone, that's the best you can do. So we're using a lot of our pragmatism. Um, Possum are found like all through the Americas too. So there is some medicine with possum, especially in Central and South America, where possum are considered like a death animal because they play dead and then they come back to life. So death and rebirth kind of animal. But really the medicine of possum is to master our reactions, okay, and to really use our discernment um, when we should fight, flight, freeze, what's going to work for us. So, um, we can think of this as like learning the skill of intuition with other people. Okay, what's going to work in this moment? So I'm excited to do the journey with possum. I'm not sure what to expect, to be honest. Um, this medicine is not one that I've commonly worked with, but I'm excited to journey and see how possum reveals itself. Now, I've been noticing my journeys get kind of like more middle of the month, but I'm aiming for early next week for you to get the guided shamanic journey. So we've talked about the tarot card, the herb of the herb plant medicine. I use the hedge witch, and so bearberry is coming through. Now, I've never worked with bearberry, but I do know it's part of uh, kinnikinnick blends, which is like almost like a blend of different herbs that are smoked. And so bearberry is part of that. So it is a pretty common plant in North America, though if I had to identify it, I probably wouldn't be able to. But it's sometimes called like alpine bearberry, and Uva ursi is the Latin name. It's related to heather, so you probably just walk past it all the time. Its fruit is a favorite of bears, which is why it's called bearberry, and it's actually found in North America, Asia, and Europe, so it's not just an American plant. It's often found in dry forests with like birch and pines. It's used in herbal remedies. It's used, like I said, with kinnikinnick. Um, it has a long history of human use. And, because of the association with bear, it is considered a plant of strength. So you can use anything that you associate with that strength if you aren't in the mood to search out bearberry or you want to use something else. It's a very hardy. It thrives in many conditions. I mean, I think a raspberry would be a good, or blackberry might be an also a helpful substitute for some of this energy, only because they can grow like weeds where we are. So, or wineberry or something like that. They're considered confident, grounded energy. So you can work with bearberry for strength, and really any plant or plant medicine that's associated with strength. Now let's talk about the crystals. So I usually pull 3 crystal cards, and an extra one fell out, and it's kind of a stone that isn't easily accessible. So I put it as an extra fourth stone if you are someone who has it or really wants to seek it out. But otherwise, we're going to talk about the 3 that came first. So the first one is petrified wood. Now, petrified wood is a quartz. It's a silicate. It's it's used for grounding. It's used for new beginnings. And basically, what happens if you don't know what petrified wood is, it happens in a specific growing environment. A tree falls and is trapped without, like, almost like in a vacuum under this like loamy soil, and there's water and silica, which is quartz, and the quartz kind of comes in and replaces the wood. So it is quartz with the natural carbon of the trees and all the other minerals that are associated with the tree there. So it has the appearance of being wood, like it's so interesting, but it really is a quartz. Again, very, very grounding. It's a really powerful stone to use at the hips. And thinking of it as almost like that tree medicine, kind of grounding and strong and, yeah, very valuable. One of the strong connections with petrified wood is with the tree of life, and kind of thinking of like our ancestors and working with some of that energy. So if you're really wanting to connect in that way, you can. So, thinking of deep roots and your own awareness and all those things, like, it's just a wonderful ally for right now. And we're seeing, the stones that came in this month are all grounding stones pretty much, except for the last one that fell out. So I think that's important too. So our next stone is obsidian. Now, some people find black obsidian really, really heavy and hard to work with. If that's so, you can work with like snowflake obsidian or mahogany obsidian or Apache tear, which is a good grief stone, really great for working with death. But obsidian is born. It's not actually a crystal. It's an amorphous solid, or it's a glass. It's a natural volcanic glass, and it's created out of volcanoes, hence the volcanic glass. obsidian was a material for weapons, for tools, for all kinds of things. So, really great ally. It helps to protect the auric field. It's so protective, really, really protective, and really great for using when you are feeling that energy coming at you. Again, a possum works with kind of like the energy of like defensiveness and fighting off people, and obsidian's so protective. I would be just looking at this medicine thinking that in February we may have to work with some of that energy of like other people, okay, and kind of like dealing with other people's shizzle, or you know, gossip or bad words or whatever. Protection with obsidian is really, really great. Now, the next stone is calcite. Now, calcite's a huge, huge group of stones. So there's red calcite, honey calcite, orange calcite. So you can work with any of them. I happen to pull a red calcite for grounding just because it went with the other stones, but honey calcite's great in the solar plexus. Orange calcite's great in the sacral. In the sacral, if you're working with like orange calcite, you're working with creativity and spontaneity. You still have that energy of calcite, which is gentle and powerful. It pushes you forward. So it can help with being more spontaneous. And kind of, we talked about looking at structures and stuff. Now, in the new moon reading, I did talk a little bit about like embracing some spontaneity and not being so structured that you like put yourself into a jail cell. So calcites can help bring that up. So stellar beam is a really, really high vibrational calcite if you want to work with that medicine. Red calcite's the grounding one. And then you have one basically for every chakra in between. So if you're working with one in particular, like say you're working with the heart chakra, you might want to pick a green calcite this month to be working with. If you're working with building your intuition, which is a wonderful one to work with possum, you're going to work with a blue calcite. Okay. And the last stone that came through is zincite. Now, zincite is a man made stone. It's not man made in the sense there's some guy in a like typically it's created out of zinc mines, which is where it was started. It's kind of like a byproduct of zinc mining and smelting. It is so beautiful. It's very rare, which is why like it's just hard to find. Like if I said, oh, you should go get a zincite, like you would go to your local place, and if they have one, they would have one, and the one would be extremely expensive. They look like usually almost like needles, and they range from like bright red to cherry, like cherry red to yellow to green or blue. It's not there are some natural zinc, but it's typically the result of zinc smelting, like I said. And it really is like one of the most creative, high energy stones I've ever worked with. And I work with it, like I wouldn't work with it to take it to bed because it does give a lot of energy. So it's really the creative energy. So super good. It's great for joy, it's great for play, it's great for creativity, it's great for looking at things differently, like we talked about, changing your structure. So really wonderful stones to be working with and wonderful allies this month. So thank you so much for being on this journey with me, and I will talk to you soon. Okay, bye.
Thanks for listening to Centered with me, Angie Yingst. If you'd like to send me a question or comment about this show or any shows, you can send them to Angie@themoonandstone.com.